Hello and good morning. And I'm short, so I'll put the mic down here. Hope you can hear me all right. Delighted to be here with you. And I'm going to give a short session. I'll remember what Dave from Think House said, and I will try not to provide TMI. I will be keeping it short, keeping it simple, and making it interactive. So I will be demanding of you, if you don't mind, politely, to get involved with the presentation. I'm going to ask you to take your phones out and have them at the ready, because I'm going to try and be very techno at one point, and we might try and get some phone responses. But I just thought I would start out by telling you a little bit about myself. I worked as a research scientist for the guts of 2 decades before seeing the light and giving all that up and going back and retraining as a horticulturist and working at a place called the Eden Project in Cornwall for a couple of years. Yeah, great. Sorry, I know you're jealous already. You just hate me now. Yeah, sorry. And from there, came back to Dublin to work in education. So through Eden, I became involved not just in horticultural management, but also in public education, and came back to work initially with adult learners. And I would say I still work with adult learners. They're students in third level education, though the adult bit is questionable sometimes. But I'm now working within the primary context in the Marino Institute of Education there at the bottom of the screen. Working primarily on the science, geography and history education aspects of the curriculum. So that's the SESE curriculum as we know it. But also getting involved with our visual arts team and getting out into, we have a model school garden which was set up by the wonderful Paddy Madden many years ago. Doing my best, Paddy, to keep the garden going as much as possible. So that's me. Moving on to think about the curriculum. So I'm here today not to tell you how to connect creatively with the curriculum, but to reassure you and to remind you that you are already, in many different ways, I'm sure, connecting creatively with the curriculum. And really, it's just an opportunity for us to share our ideas with each other about how we're already doing that, and thinking about the language that we can use when we're talking or meeting with the teachers and with school principals to let them know that you're connected to the curriculum, and to encourage them as much as possible to bring that learning that the children are gaining when they're working with you back into the classroom, and to extend that learning beyond the 1 or 2 or 5 occasions that you're working with them. I did a piece of research, sorry, I will keep it short, but I just wanted to say I did a piece of research about 2 years ago on school gardens, interviewing school teachers and school principals about how they use their school garden, and in particular what made it successful for them. The one thing that came up over and over again was the support that they got from heritage and school specialists. So I just thought I'd share that with you and congratulate you on that. It's a huge achievement. So our primary school curriculum tells us right at the beginning in the introduction that the SESE part particularly, so social, environmental and scientific education, should provide opportunities for children to explore, investigate and develop an understanding of the natural, human, social and cultural dimensions of local and wider environments. So that's what you do already. You're right there at the start. What I would like to do now is to start our interactive bit. There's sticky notes on the table. I would like to ask you what principles or objectives that you have in mind for your activities or for the children that you're working with when you are out in schools leading, facilitating or teaching activities. So I'm going to spend maybe 3 minutes. If everybody would like to take a couple of the sticky notes, just jot down whatever are the main principles or ideas that you have in mind or that you're working to when you're working with children in schools. And we'll collect those onto one of the larger sheets, then we stick our post-it notes onto the larger sheets. I'll hum, you do some more. Thank you. One per post-it, but you can use as many post-its as you like. And if you want to discuss it with your table mates as well as you go along, that's fine. You can work into it, discuss it with your table mates. 3 minutes. Mind if I move you? No, go on. Thank you. Sorry. There, fab. Yes, learning by doing. Thank you. And I'm sure there's lots more from each of you. But this is just as a guide. This is what the primary curriculum sets out as its pedagogical principles. So the main principles for teaching and learning within the primary curriculum. And I bet you'll discover that almost everything that you've put has actually mapped very nicely onto this. And if it hasn't, we can always talk about that in a couple of minutes. So primarily, or most importantly, the child's sense of wonder and natural curiosity should be a primary motivating factor in learning. So yes, making it fun, making there be a sense of wonder, as I saw somebody put down. Also, we want to build on children's existing knowledge and experience. So they're coming to the table or they're coming to the garden with a wealth of knowledge and experience of their own, if they're 3, if they're 13. We know from research and from experience that learning is most effective when it's integrated. So that you're not learning science or you're not doing history. What you're doing is learning, and you're learning in a holistic way. And children also learn best when they have agency, when they can make some of the decisions, when they have a voice within their learning. We would hope that learning is as active as possible. I noticed a lot of you had active learning written down on your post-its. And that discovery method. So again, children making decisions, asking questions, having the opportunity to find out for themselves. And also have the opportunity to solve problems. So setting them challenges and giving them problems to solve. The skills that they're learning, that they should be transferable and integrated, so that they should facilitate the transfer of learning from one environment to the other environment. That they get the opportunity to work collaboratively, so in groups, in pairs, learning from each other as much as they ever would learn from any of us. And very importantly, the curriculum states that the child's immediate environment provides the context for their learning. So learning within their school, within their community, within their locality. That makes the learning relevant, meaningful for the children. And not just the knowledgeable dimension or the cognitive dimension to learning, but also that we should emphasise the aesthetic dimension, the social dimension, and the affective or emotional dimension. That they're all important factors in children's learning. So making it fun, again, I think that was the first sticker I saw, that it would be fun. So already we're thinking about that holistic experience of children's learning, and I'm sure that you have a lot. There's a couple of things that I would add to that, but then I didn't write the curriculum, so who am I? I think we should try to make children's learning experiences memorable and enjoyable. And not me, but Paula Owens, who's a teacher educator from the UK or in the UK. And she emphasises the 3 aspects to knowledge. In Paula's case, she's referencing geography, but I actually think it's far more relevant or widespread than that. We have core knowledge, the facts that we learn about something. But also, equally as important, is the perceptions or the feelings that we have about the place that we're studying, or the time or the people that we're studying. And as well, the empathic dimension, or being able to understand other people's perspectives, linking in with the history curriculum, I guess, but actually just also social and geographical understanding. Ashter, I think, says it best of all. So Ashter, the early years learning curriculum, has in their guideline document this wonderful expression: let me explore, try out, to make mistakes, to discover and create my own theories about how things work and why, so that I can be independent and self-reliant, and I can learn about the world I live in. I mean, that's what we are trying to do always, is to help children to learn about the world that they live in. And I suppose, so that's a little thing to reflect on, how much of our teaching allows children to explore, to try things out for themselves, to make mistakes, to discover for themselves about the world that they are living in. The curriculum, and I'll focus primarily on the SESE curriculum for today, but actually I think it's very difficult to talk about things in isolation. I do think the curriculum works best as a whole. So there's always elements of the language curriculum and the literacy curriculum and the numeracy curriculum coming in to SESE. And for me particularly, I think there's lots of element of the arts curriculum come into SESE as well, or to working with children outside the classroom. But the curriculum focuses primarily on two elements. They talk about developing process skills, and they talk about developing conceptual understanding. And these process skills are the skills that children will develop when they are working as scientists, when they are working as geographers, when they are working as historians. When they're in your workshops, are they working as scientists? Are they working as geographers? Are they working as young historians? The other aspect then is the conceptual understanding that they're gaining from their working, the context in which they are learning, the big ideas that are being addressed by the activities that they're doing. And we'll come back to that in a moment, but I just wanted to not spend too much time talking and to get active again, and to think about Karen, my colleague at Marino, and I, when we are working with our students, we focus primarily on children learning through inquiry. So research has shown, and we believe, that children learn very effectively within the arena of science and history and geography and beyond when they are learning through inquiry. And what I wanted to ask of you next was, what do you think we mean when we say inquiry? What does the word inquiry mean to you? This is where I'm going to ask you to get your phones out. So I'm going to go very techno. I'm going to ask you to go to www.menti.com, MENTI.com. I think I can probably put the instructions up here. So grab your phone, go to menti.com, enter the code 281089. It's like the Eurovision Song Contest. And it says "and vote," but what I mean is actually write in whatever inquiry means to you, whatever words you think of when you think of the word inquiry. People are putting up questioning, research, curiosity, connection. Ooh, lovely. It's growing all the time. Sorry, how did I do that? Yeah, curiosity and investigate are questioning, discovery. So there's lots of ways to think about inquiry, and yes, all of those aspects, all of those elements are really important. Curiosity, questioning, investigation, discovery. There are several different models of learning through inquiry, and I've just put up a very simple one here today. Karen is probably looking at me going, why did you choose that model? However, I think this is a pretty straightforward one. So when children are learning through inquiry, it's easiest to think of them working through a process of inquiry, which as I said, there's lots of different ways to develop or to represent it. But at its most fundamental, this comes from Margaret Roberts, this particular model. It's about starting off by creating a need to know, offering a provocation or offering a challenge, getting children to start hypothesizing, questioning, asking questions, speculating, and then planning how they might find the answers to those questions. then allowing them access to resources, whether that's just the great outdoors, or whether we are providing resources and activities for them to work with, where they can work with evidence or work with artifacts that will allow them to develop their questioning, to begin to answer their speculation. They're learning to work with data, essentially, to work with evidence, to sort, to classify, all of those skills that we think when we think about investigative skills. And then asking them to come together and to make sense of the new things that they have learned, whether that's about how to connect two pieces of willow together, or whether it's about how to recognise different leaves or tree buds, leaf buds on a tree. How do we encourage them to then bring that knowledge together in a cohesive way, or to start making the connections, joining the dots between these disparate parts of pieces of information? So when they're describing what they see or what they found, when they're explaining to each other and to new people what it is that they've discovered, when they're performing analysis, so whether it's comparing or contrasting information, making connections between different pieces of information, reaching conclusions, and finally having the opportunity to reflect upon this new learning that they have acquired. So working through from the questioning stage, through the finding out, through the making sense, and then giving them an opportunity to reflect, to identify what they could do next time, what they might do differently next time, what more they want to find out, how successful were they in achieving their aim, or how successful was their prediction, how accurate was their prediction, is what they've discovered different to what they thought they might. I would add to Margaret Roberts' framework one extra step, which is that children should be empowered to then take action. So as a way of, this I suppose has numerous functions. Not only does it allow us to see, or does it illustrate what the children's new understanding is, or how well they have understood what we're trying to teach them, but also it empowers them to make a difference in their world. Whether that action that they're taking is to plant or care for a garden, or to cut down on their use of plastics, or to do a project about their local area, or to find out more about the workhouse in their local area, whatever that action is, that they should be empowered to move their learning forward to the next phase. And this comes back as well, I suppose, to connecting with the classroom. So are the activities that we're doing, are they standalone, or are they something that encourage children to move forward to do something additional? And particularly if you're working through a series of workshops or a series of sessions with the children, how is their learning progressing through those sessions? How are they building on their existing knowledge? How are they acquiring the data and working with that data or new learning? And how is that changing their experience of the world? There's some of the questions I suppose we could be asking excuse me, ourselves. So just coming back to the whole idea of skills and conceptual understanding, how does inquiry empower us or enable us to bring these elements of the curriculum to the fore? We talk about big ideas or concepts that we ask children to understand, and that's big as in powerful or useful within their world. So it helps us to make connections between lots of different experiences and actually work towards a deeper understanding of the world. And I'll come to some of the big ideas in a moment. So in the curriculum, we talk about the transferable skills or the process skills as being either skills to do with designing and making, or skills to do with working scientifically. But actually, when you look at it, they're exactly the kind of skills that children are using when they're working through an inquiry, when they're solving a problem, when they are finding out something or learning something about the world. So they're questioning, they're observing, they're making predictions, and they're having the opportunity to test those predictions out. They're analysing, in other words, they're sorting and classifying, they're recognising patterns, they're sequencing things. And really importantly, they have the opportunity then, like real scientists, like real geographers, like real historians, to connect with a wider audience and to communicate their thinking, their learning, their understanding to other people. That's a really important skill that we sometimes forget. How are we giving them the opportunity to record and communicate their learning in as creative ways as you can imagine? And some of the big ideas that they encounter within the science curriculum are ideas around the fundamental forces within the universe, the properties of different particles, the properties of different materials, looking at human and physical processes within their environment, looking at living things and how they work and the processes that go on with those, and thinking about diversity, connection and interaction. And I'm sure many of you were sitting in the audience going, yeah, we do a lot of that. Yeah, we're looking at living things, we're looking at diversity, we're thinking about how things interact, the impact that things have on each other. You're already doing all of this stuff. In terms of geography, the skills that we ask children to develop, some of them look remarkably similar to the ones that we've been talking about within the science curriculum. Again, it's this holistic development, it's common sense. This is what children are developing when they're learning through inquiry, they're questioning, observing, predicting. We also want them to get a sense of place. What is this place like and why is it like this? How does this place relate to other places? What are the connections and the relationships? So this is the sense of space, how places connect together. How do we represent this space, whether it's a map or a globe? Being able to picture a place and then being able to investigate a place in the same way as they do with any scientific investigation. And again, the big ideas, I'm sure, are ideas that are being addressed in your sessions already. How children connect to a place, how they become aware of and observe in more detail the human aspects, the physical aspects of a place. The impact that different activities or cultures or events might have on the world around them. And again, diversity, in this sense, perhaps cultural diversity, and the importance of that. When children are working as historians, interestingly, I suppose the history curriculum is the only one that says children should be working as historians. They're working scientifically, I suppose, in the science curriculum. But working as historians, again, using evidence, understanding, developing an understanding of time and chronology and the passage of time. Understanding, again, relating back to geography, how a place changes and why it might change, or how a community changes and why. And also the things that remain the same throughout, whether they're traditions or local beliefs or habits of mind, the way things stay the same. Again, the impact that particular events have, or the reasons that particular things might happen, and how complex that can be. And also how other people's perspectives might differ when it comes to looking at a particular event and its cause and its effect. So bringing again that emotional dimension, that empathic dimension to our learning. So putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes, whether that's somebody from a different culture or just somebody from a different time. And it's great, I think, that that's specifically emphasised within the history curriculum. It specifically said this is a skill. This skill of empathy is something we are hoping to engage and develop within children. And that's reflected in the similar big ideas of history: continuity and change, time and chronology, cause and effect. I threw this up here as well because I think often if we're looking for a way to stitch things together, to make connections, actually we can be working with bigger ideas that transcend any one aspect of the curriculum. So some of those universal themes, which are not bound by specific cultures or by specific times, or even may not be just specifically human, can actually, if we're working towards one of those, often when I'm talking to student teachers and asking them to plan their lessons, I ask them to think of a big idea, a universal idea, like community, like power, like belonging or tradition, and actually to plan with that idea in mind. And all the other smaller curriculum foci will flow from that. So if you're thinking about community, you can find historical aspects to that, you can find scientific aspects, you can find geographical aspects to that idea of connection between beings and interdependence between beings. And the last bit of work I'm going to ask you to do is to think about and to talk about and to capture on your sheets, and you can write directly onto the big sheets if you like at this stage, because I'm going to get each table to do this collectively, to think about how your activities and how your work with children empowers them to tackle some of these big ideas. What are the specific things that you do that empower children to make decisions, to connect with a deeper understanding of history or science or geography within their local environment? It could be as simple as just putting up another phrase that was in the introduction to the curriculum. It states that assessment of learning is integral to learning. So in other words, that we need to be able to measure and follow how children's understanding changes as a result of what we do with them. And while you don't have to worry about assessing children's learning, actually it's a really nice way to connect with teachers if your workshops are enabling them to assess what children have learned. Then you are doing them a huge service. So if the children, when they're working with you, are producing either new ideas, or perhaps they're producing something concrete, they're making things together, or they are putting together a project, that's really useful for teachers as well. So maybe some of the things that you're writing down are things that will enable teachers and yourselves to visualize how children's understandings have changed through what you're doing. While you're thinking about that, and while you're thinking about, because I know I just thrown a lot of information at you, and we have just maybe 3 minutes left for you to do that activity, I'm going to show you one way that we have done something like this with our students. We have worked through, I forgot to bring a copy of Stephen's book. Stephen, who's going to speak to us shortly, Stephen Pickering, has a book called Teaching Outdoors Creatively. And with our students, one of the activities we do is an inquiry walk. So we bring our students out into Marino, where we're situated, and we bring them for a walk around. And we ask them, or we encourage them to come up with their own ideas, but if not, we give them some ideas of something that they would like to focus on, a question that they might have, whether it's about how signs and symbols are used in their community, whether it's about how biodiversity is recognised within the community. We ask them to go out and investigate this for a short period of time, go for a walk. And then what we do is we ask them to take photographs. Now, with children, if they have iPads, great, they can take a photograph. Otherwise, maybe they're just taking a drawing, or perhaps you're getting the teacher to take photographs for them, or you're taking photographs for them. But this is just how we've connected it together to then give us an object at the end, a concrete representation of what understanding has been developed through this activity. So I'll play this tinkly away in the background. You can have a look, and also you can be thinking about what you're going to write or you can be writing your activities, your shared ideas for how you're going to enable children to learn through inquiry. It's a great free little program called Animoto, actually, for anyone who hasn't come across that before. So, just within the last 3 minutes then, what is it that you do? Share with your colleagues, share your ideas, so that we can then put those, we're going to put those up around the room as the day goes on, so you can then benefit from each other's ideas. What is it that you do that empowers children to learn through inquiry? If you're wondering about anything, you can use, I've moved on to the next slide, and if you want to, we're out of time now, so I won't take questions here, but if you want to put up questions on the Mentimeter, just type in, I've moved on, you should be able to, by using the same code, if you want to type any questions, if you've things that you're wondering about, if you've comments that you'd like to make, put them up there and we'll capture them as well. And we'll try and make as much of this visible around the space for the rest of the day. But thank you for engaging. I hope it was useful, or at least got you thinking. And I'm very excited for our next speaker, because I learned a lot from Stephen a couple of years ago when I heard him speak. So thanks again. Thank you very much.